I don't know about you guys, but I have had the best afternoon ever, talking about funerary models all afternoon. Our final presenter is Dr. Gersande Eschenbrenner Diemer, and she will be presenting the production of wooden funerary figure models in the first intermediate period, redrawing a little-known artistic landscape. And Gersande is a former Marie Skłodowska-Curie Research Fellow at the University College of London between 2016 and 2018, where she trained in wood anatomy at the Durrell Laboratory, which is part of the Royal Botanic Gardens of Kew. She undertook a postdoctoral project at the University of Jaén in Spain between 2019 and 2021. Since 2022, she's been a Maria Zambrano researcher at the University of Alcala de la Henares, excuse my terrible French pronunciation, Spanish pronunciation there. Since 2022, she's also led the Medjehu project. You can tell my voice is running out at the end of the day. Investigating woodcraft along the Nile, which is affiliated with the University of Lisbon, and I have shared the link for that project in the chat. Please check it out. As an archaeobotanist and Egyptologist, she works as a wood specialist in several archaeological missions in Egypt, and she has co-organized 2 international conferences dedicated to wood in Egypt. She's associated with various institutions and research projects as a wood specialist as well, so another very, very busy person. Gersande, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Sam, for this very kind presentation, and thank you for organizing this fantastic afternoon, for inviting me and to give us the opportunity to discuss and to present our research. Thank you to all for this fantastic presentation you did today. It was very nice to see that how many ideas and concepts joined together. So it's so much important to collaborate and to produce as a global development on this kind of object, on material culture. So before starting my talk, I will just try to answer briefly on the workshop part. That is my favorite topic, as you know. So yes, just to go on what was said, and that was totally true. The problem in woodcraft study is to identify the workshop. And it's exactly what we try to do with the team of the Medjehu project, to redraw the history of woodcraft and the different techniques and styles in the development of workshops in Egypt. As say Monica, for Asyut, for example, the workshop were mainly and certainly placed in the living areas that are now under layers of life. That's normal. Egypt is growing and continuing. So to redraw and to find, to discover and identify a workshop, we need to work in the opposite direction. We are enough lucky in Egypt to have all this quantity of material preserved in wood. And so to identify the workshop, we have to go from the object, from the manufacturer object, to the tree, to the craftsman, to all these techniques. And it's exactly what we can do. And the wooden models were my first love, I would say, during my PhD, to identify these workshop productions and to have a better idea of how these objects are produced along their short history, but very interesting one, with a lot of differences, subdivisions, specificities from local areas, depending of the period. So today I will try to show you a short focus on this production of the first intermediate period. All this study will be shortly published in the book called Shaping the Afterlife. That is a complete study of the wooden production of the wooden models and wooden funerary statues associated through this workshop focus and the moving of the object. As you will see, everything, and as you know, everything was moving, and we can identify these routes of objects along the Nile and in different areas. So we all speak today about a definition of wooden models. That is, it seems, one of the main topic and the main issue regarding this object. I would just go quickly on this topic before going back to the workshop one. So we see that the primary function of this funerary equipment is to satisfy first the needs of the deceased, the material needs in the afterlife, that, as you see, the food, serving, clothing, this kind of thing. And this evolution is linked to the evolution to the more religious topic of this production is absolutely linked to the evolution of the funerary literature. And it's something very important when we speak about material culture. It's to reconnect the material culture and the text. And it's what my colleague Carlos Gracia Zamacona did in his conference in 2022 called Variability in the Egyptian Mortuary Text. And I had the opportunity to present this topic of reconnecting text and materialities through the topic of the wooden models. So everything is linked to a global perception and vision of these needs that are represented through the this kind of object. I will not go so long on this topic, but just to make a short focus on these servant statues that are the first representation of this servant statues that are very different in concept of the funerary wooden models that, as Anne-Messy Roth mentioned, as a serving statues. It's very important to see that these are the servant statue, the limestone one, are the actors of the funeral cult of the deceased, that main of them are inscribed, and it's not the case of the wooden funerary models. A strict definition of this term must be given first because of this term of model. As when we mention this object, we are all in front of this issue of speaking about model, miniature, model of object. But this term can also be used for example, for clay boats or dome granaries deposited in tombs of the elite in the pre-Dynastic period, and these are servant statues from the Old Kingdom. The models of objects are also surrounding the dead, and with the wooden sandals, the weapons, the tools that are generally placed in small boxes that are also generally referred as models. So it's absolutely essential to distinguish between models of objects and funerary models. Unlike the simulacra of weapons, sandals, and food, funerary models always, as we all say, associate figurines with the scenes depicted. They clearly illustrate a manufacturing process, an activity. I will not go further, but the thing is that it's a clear materialization of concepts as we all present in different ways. And it's also the reason why, to my view, but it's something that has to be developed, this object, this representation have no name in ancient Egyptian language. And also, it's the reason why, even if here I put the masterpieces of the production of the golden age of this production at the beginning of the Middle Kingdom, the majority of the objects of the funerary wooden models do not need to be beautiful to be efficient. What is needed is their presence, and as you say, we say, as Monica or Georgia or all of us, generally we have the final step of the production. This is what is important. There are a concept, a materialization of a concept that will be developed at this final step, and that will be useful in the afterlife. So this examination of all this production that is, as you can imagine, a huge amount of material. So allowed me to identify 4 phases of production and the different also place of production and sending of the objects. These phases are also punctuated by certain key reigns, like in phase 1, that match with the 6th dynasty. The reign of Pepin II correspond to the first development of this production. The phase 2, which began in around, of course, we are not on fixed dates, around the Dynasty VIII and covered the first intermediate period, ended with the reign of Mentuhotep II, which laid the foundations for phase 3. This phase, number 3, that is starting between the end of the 11th dynasty and the first half, the reign of Senusret I, in this 12th dynasty, correspond much with this golden age, this peak of production, as you can see on the left of the screen here. All these areas are producing amazing and a lot of objects, and some of them send their production in other places. Finally, on the phase 4, that is located between the second half of the reign of Senusret I and the reign of Senusret III, this phase marked the end of the production of the funerary models that disappeared then completely for the funerary equipment of the elite after changing completely of symbolism and function in the tomb. But this is another history. As you can probably imagine, of these 4 chronological phases, the one that raises the most question is phase 2, the one of the first intermediate period. So I will try to concentrate on these phases today, and to show you that, in fact, inside of this phase number 2, 2 distinct parts have been identified. The first, which we call phase 2A, begins in the 8th dynasty and ends just before the reign of Mentuhotep II. The second phase, phase 2B, starts immediately with the reign of Mentuhotep II, that plays a crucial role in this production. If we focus solely on the development of the production of this object in phase 2, it's clear that the production of wooden funerary models fell sharply in phase 2A rather than the other way round, as was generally accepted. Indeed, it was not until the reign of Mentuhotep II that this activity resumed, as shown by the large number of wooden figurines and fragments of scenes found in the funerary temple of Mentuhotep II at Deir el-Bahri. Here is, I choose to, this phase 2 is characterized by a much smaller number of wooden funerary models than in the previous period. However, we are still dependent, of course, on the condition in which these objects were preserved. For the first intermediate period, this is particularly the case in the Heracleopolis region, where the water table, which is particularly high, causing the loss of organic material. So we miss all this part to know also if there were some models there. The poor condition in which the organic material was preserved in the Heracleopolis region, and above all, the clear marked reduction of this production, if not a total absence in some area of these wooden funerary scenes in many necropolises of the period, make it difficult to analyze the modes of production and use of this funerary material in phase 2A. However, on the basis of the few clues available to us, we can see that the production and distribution of wooden funerary models reflected the political context of the country, divided between the north and the south. In the north, as you have some example here, The production methods were in keeping with the Memphite tradition dating from phase I. The manufacturing the Memphite area, these funerary models were used by the elites attached to the Heracleopolitan kingdom, both in the necropolis of Teti and Saqqara and in the provinces where Memphite funerary models were sent. The spread of Memphite objects to the provinces is clearly attested in the phase I, with the Memphite region being the main region for the production of funerary models at the end of the Sixth Dynasty. This phenomenon clearly continued into phase II, during which the wood craftsmen active in the Memphite area continue the work using specific techniques and stylistic characteristics that were a continuation of phase I. Let's just have a look to the woodwork dating from phase II. The only dated models with certainty to phase II discovered in the Memphite region comes from the Teti necropolis in Saqqara. The most important group of funerary models discovered there and dated to the beginning of phase II was that discovered by Cecil Fierce in an anonymous tomb in 1926. It should be noted that this discovery was not included in first book on the Teti necropolis, depriving us of the archaeological data that could have provided additional information for dating this tomb. Dating can therefore only be based on the study of models and statuary from a technical and a stylistic point of view. In this anonymous tomb, 11 scenes were discovered piled up in the immediate vicinity of the statues of the deceased. The entire collection was then acquired by Gustave Jequier on behalf of the Musée d'Ethnographie in Neuchâtel, where it is now kept. This photograph of the discovery found in the museum's archives demonstrate the coexistence of two types of model. One of the ancient typology that can be compared with the criteria identified in phase I, like one worker working on one task, or two or three, maximum two, mainly like in limestone representation. And the second kind that uses new characteristics that appear in phase II. On the other hand, all these scenes have their base painted in black or gray-green, a chromatic range identified as being a Memphite geographical criteria. These scenes show between 1 and 3 workers at work. Their faces are fairly thick. The details are carved and painted, and the ears of the men and women with short hair are large and carved. The themes dealt with are similar to the scenes from phase I: the making of bread and beer, the preparation of beer jars, and the roasting of poultry. These different scenes feature antique style furnishings, in particular low millstones, red ovoid jars with black stopper and low brazier. All the elements are important to date these productions. The other scenes found in this anonymous tomb show a new development with more figurines. For example, here with the procession of offering bearers or the bakery that you will see then, but also new themes, in particular the type 4 boats, according to George Reisner typology, carrying the coffin of the deceased under a canopy, or the very first scene of potters. The theme of craftsmanship will become a theme specific to the Memphite area in phase III. This list of, here you have the bakery production and the production of the representation of potters, one of the main topics of the Memphite area then. The list of this Memphite object dating from phase II and discovered in the Teti necropolis was extended with the discovery in January 2021 of a funerary boat similar to those in the anonymous tomb by an Egyptian archaeological mission led by Zahi Hawass. With the exception of his discovery site, the Teti necropolis, we have unfortunately no information about the owner of this object or about his tomb in general. As with phase one, this production, which is located in the Memphite area, is distributed throughout the provinces. This is particularly the case at Naga Der, where 5 tombs have yielded complete or fragmentary models from this northern production. I will mention in particular anonymous tomb N202, where a set of 5 scenes was discovered. 2 funerary boats carrying a coffin under a canopy, a bakery where 4 workers, 2 men and 2 women are active, a scene where 5 workers are engaged in making mud bricks, and a roaster. All of these scenes have a black base. An anonymous tomb discovered by Schiaparelli in Assiut contained a group of Memphite models and statues with characteristic technical and stylistic features typical from this area. In particular, the work on the face and the anatomy of the human figures are at the continuation of the second style highlighted by Narusman at the end of the 6th dynasty on statuary. Unlike phase one, when the Memphite region had a virtual monopoly on the production of funerary models, phase two saw the emergence of regional productions whose artistic focus can be identified in Upper Egypt. Here is another boat from this tomb, anonymous, also discovered in Assiut by Schiaparelli. In phase one, only the Elephantine region developed local production, use techniques and characteristics in production. These include, in particular, the use of chevron motif on the hull of boats and on various baskets found in the necropolis of Kubet el Hawa, as well as the wigs on certain figures, as Sam knows very well on these figures that you have studied. The use of a much more varied polychromy is notable, whether in the clothing of these 2 figurines or in the decoration of the bow and stern of the type 4 boats. However, unlike the Memphite region, where large-scale craftwork continued for a long time, the sets of models found in Middle and Upper Egypt mostly correspond to a single production episode rather than a large-scale production. With the exception of Gebelein and Naga Der, where models using common technical and stylistic traits have been identified in different burials, the funerary models dated to phase 2 at Beni Hassan, Antinoe, and Der El Bersha have no known parallels. They do, however, have specific and unique characteristics that highlight a variety of skills using common regional stylistic criteria. The influence of Southern Egypt on artistic production in wood, already observed in the Old Kingdom, was thus gradually confirmed during the intermediate period. A first group of objects dating from the beginning of the 11th dynasty was found at Beni Hassan in tomb number 1, the one of Intef. Inside, there were both a granary production and an offering bearer. At Antinoe, the tomb of Abu and his wife revealed 2 sets of funerary models, while that of Abu's wife used a number of feathers typical of Upper Egypt.
We are having some issues.
You don't hear me?
We can hear you, but I don't think your slides are moving on. We still have the Kubet el Hawa production from phase 1 slide showing.
Oh, okay. Let me try.
So you might.
Is it moving?
Yep, that's moving on now. That's perfect. It might be worth turning your camera off just so the internet can focus on getting the voice across, if that's okay.
Okay.
Fab, thank you.
Yeah, I will close the window. Yeah. Is it okay now?
That's much better, thank you.
Okay. So I just go back if my connection is okay to do this. I'm sorry for that. Yeah. Is it okay? You have Beni Hassan on your screen?
We've just gone back to Antonov Abu wife funerary model image has just come up. So you've got the boat, the food production scene, and the granary image.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we now have the tomb of Intef. That's perfect.
You have Beni Hassan?
We did for a second, it's just gone back again.
Oh my God. Okay. So this is the tomb of Intef number 1 in Beni Hassan, with this specific style linked with what we find in the Upper Egypt. In Antinoe, do you see it? Sorry to ask you like that.
No problem. We're back on Beni Hassan again, but carry on talking, and I think the slides just take a little while to catch up.
Yeah. Okay. So in Antinoe, the tomb of Abu and his wife revealed 2 sets of funerary models. While that of Abu's wife used a number of feathers typical of Upper Egypt, the decoration on the shells and the elaborate wigs, Abu's model do not. They are, however, a continuation of phase 1, with several scenes showing between 1 and 2 workers at work. The woodwork and techniques used to make the feet also differ between the 2 sets, supporting the hypothesis that 2 distinct craftsmen were working on them. How can the differences observed between these 2 groups be explained? It is the succession in time of 2 burials, that of his wife having taken place before that of Abu, or are they the result of a choice made by their owner? At Der El Bersha, the tomb of Henu, discovered by the University of Leuven under the direction of Professor Arthur Williams, can be linked to phase 2. These 2 sets were recently re-examined by Marlene de Meyer and Luc Delvaux, enabling them to clarify a little-known context and to refine the chronology of these different sets, which share common technical, stylistic, and thematic characteristics, but illustrate the work of craftsmen whose skills were more or less accomplished. Finally, as Angela Toulet showed before, the Ghebelline site uses its own style and techniques, which have been identified not only in the tomb of Inni, but also in other objects purchased on the art market. When compared with the coffins found at the site, the funerary models produced at Ghebelline belong to large-scale regional craft industry that the production are only discovered in this necropolis. To conclude this overview of phase 2 production, that is, of course, missing the wooden that have to be done, and it's amazing to see what can be done now. It's amazing, Monica, congratulations to have this look on that. Let's have, it's necessary to come back in time and to the reign of Mentuhotep II, which marked a very major turning point in the production of wooden funerary models, and even more so for wood craftsmanship as a whole. Because of the destruction caused by production, the lime, and the reoccupation of Theban tombs over time, few complete models dating from the reign of Mentuhotep II have come down to us. This includes the boats found in the king's cenotaph, a large scene of bakery, granaries, and 2 offering bearers, all found in the king's burial complex of Deir el-Bahari. On the other hand, a multitude of fragments can be associated with this reign. Found mainly in the king's funerary complex, other fragments have been identified in several Theban tombs dated to this reign, in particular in the tomb of the treasurer Kheti, Titis 311, where a slaughtered ox was discovered. The study of these fragments provides several clues as to how this funerary furniture was used during the reign of Mentuhotep II. The production was clearly expanded under the impetus of this sovereign. These objects are used by the king and the country's highest elite, and a large number of craftsmen hands were identified, laying the foundation for the regional production that developed in phase 3. In phase 3, between the end of the 11th dynasty and the first half of the reign of Senusret I, many sites developed their production of funerary models. Surprisingly, there was no evidence of trial or error on this production. The styles and techniques were well established, the quality differs, but the know-how had been mastered. As mentioned, Monica for Asyut, and these figurines looking so close from the Mentuhotep, the second figurines, it's not just in Asyut that this comparison can be done. In fact, it was by delving into the dozens of fragments found in Deir el-Bahari that it was finally possible to understand, to try to propose this hypothesis that some of these craftsmen that was trained in Thebes and working in Thebes were then sent to Middle Egypt to develop this local workshop. In fact, all the techniques and styles that make Asyut, Mer so distinctive have been identified in the Theban production of phase 2. So it's just as every time not a question of style only. The techniques is so important because, for example, if you compare production from Asyut and Mer, you will have close comparisons, close elements of style. But if you compare the technique, you see a clear difference. Asyut craftsmen were so good in painting, in decoration of the figurine, but the crafting of the figurines, of the models, of the majority of the model is not so developed, so well done as it's in Mer, just close to this, to Asyut. Mer developed a specific and very important production, and with the comparison of a global perspective of all the wooden objects that were made there, because to identify a workshop, you have to see all the production made in the same material to make comparisons. If you compare this, Mer appear to be one of these. It's a problem to define this and to link this workshop to an institution, to the state, to the official sphere. By the way, it was this. It seems that Mer was an royal or official workshop where all this production were then developed in the beginning of this, the only site that sent this production in other places in Egypt. So it's the same case for the coffins or other kind of object as shown by the production and the discoveries that were made in Kubat el-Hawa in different tombs of the Middle Kingdom, where the coffins made of cedar were clearly made and decorated in Mer before being sent to Kubat el-Hawa. You were speaking later about reuse of material. This is one of the most important elements to identify a workshop. In Mer, it's clear that they have access to these reuse elements from the production of coffins, from the production of boxes. And so the study, for example, of the collection of Lyon in the Museum of Fine Arts of Lyon, with the scanning of the collection, and the identification of the bases, the different pieces of wood used to make the different parts of the model show a clear reuse of material for this production, for the mare production, that is in fact divided in 3 production then in the Middle Kingdom, from the best one to the most less defined. But it's a contemporary production that show, when you take all this information, that different craftsmen were working in the same place, producing different kind of production in the same area. So all these elements are so important when you want to identify your workshop. And all the workshops are not using exactly the same way of doing. For example, in the Memphite area, there is no traces of reused wood. It's clearly choice wood from the first hand. So you have a clearly choice of coniferous wood to make the statue of the dead one. Sometimes it's figurine, but there is no traces of reuse. Every workshop has its own feather, and that's why you always need to combine the material study, the technical manufacturing techniques, and the style to identify a workshop. So to conclude on this, trying not to go too far in the Middle Kingdom, it's clear when you go back to all these fragments and all these objects all around Egypt, following a clear development, that Mentuhotep II laid the foundation of this Middle Kingdom golden age of the wooden model production in phase 3. We can have this hypothesis that the craftsmen were sent to Middle Egypt. Of course, there is no text speaking about that, but when you go back to the object, when you go back to the techniques and to the style, it's this kind of elements that appear not in one side, but in different ones. The Memphite area perpetuated a know-how inherited from the Old Kingdom, while Upper Egypt developed its own style, implemented by different hands. The study of wood production raises the question of the organization of this workshop, of this craftsmen, of their mobility and their autonomy. All in all, this multitude of questions to be examined is a formidable challenge that will enable us to gradually redraw a little-known artistic landscape. Thank you so much. And sorry for this problem of connection.
No, don't worry. Thank you so much. That was absolutely fascinating and a really, really useful run through of the way these production sites work. It's such a difficult thing to try and trace, and your PhD, it's a masterpiece. The amount of detail you go into, it's been a godsend. Thank you so much for the amazing work you've done with these things.
Thank you to you. Thank you.
We do have a couple of questions in the chat for you. The first one, how likely is it that some of the models were made in settlement houses rather than in specific workshops? There seem to be indications that in the Old Kingdom settlement of Elephantine and possibly in the Valley of the Kings later on, that people are whittling and making their own objects. So it's a question looking at whether, when we use the word workshop, are we imagining an official setup, or is this a more informal kind of cottage craft that might have been going on?
Yeah, it's a big question, and it's clear that it's not a fixed image. You can't say a workshop is like that. You have to take in mind the official places, but we don't have the organization. Of course, when you look at the models, for example, of this workshop of craft that are mainly from the Memphite area, you have this image of an organization with a repartition of different craft in the same place. But you have also this informal production of wood, and wood is a material that was reused from the beginning for fire, and it's Manuela Lehmann that did a fantastic study of beds from Amara, and she tried to understand how these objects were made. So with experimental archaeology, doing these beds. This object for this production were made close to the home by the people, and the piece of wood that were cut were reused to make workshop. The only workshop that we know for a wood production are the one I studied in Elephantine Island, one absolutely not for the funerary production of objects, as we don't have any of this, the funerary object production, we don't have any specific workshop, archaeologically speaking, I mean. But this workshop discovered by the team of Cornelius von Pilgrim in Elephantine, one was dated from the 18th dynasty and was dedicated to the production of bows and arrows. So we have some elements like that. And the other one was dated from the 30th dynasty for the production of dovetails for the construction of the temple of Khnum. So we have two different kinds of workshops that were based in the city, in the island, but for the wooden funerary material, we don't have anything. So it's very something important to have in mind.
Thank you. There's another question asking about, with regards to the production of these models, were the figures kind of made because a pre-assembly kit? So the workshop would create 30 or 40 squatting figures, 30 or 40 standing figures, pull them off a shelf and put together the model, or would they plan out the model and make each of the figures as they go specific to what they need? Have you found any evidence suggesting either of those options?
Yeah, you have this is a very it's something that is yeah, to have in mind, because you have always this image of these figures and just the ends and the arms moving to change the way of this, or the changing of the pending of the figures that is giving another function to the worker that is represented. Of course, in big production like Mer, for example, you see clearly, and this is something interesting, and this is also the problem of reconnecting the object. What is the place of art market and all that? What is clear is that in Mer, in the beginning of the Middle Kingdom, we have three productions clearly identifiable, recognizable through techniques and style. But in some objects, you find one figure from Mer C style mixed with a donkey from Mer A style. So what this was done properly, like they have access to this figure, they take it and they make it in purpose for a specific need, or is it the result of the reconstruction, as you speak about, of the object, and to add more figures on the scene? The thing is that they come from the same workshop and they are contemporary. This is for sure. And it's something that has to be developed. And of course, the comparison of the materials, not only the wood, but also the pigments, the gesso, everything can be a clue to answer to these questions.
Fab, thank you. I think, as with a lot of the talks today, we've raised more questions than answers, but at least acknowledging these challenges is really, really important.